love about RevRoad and RevU and RevUp and just the various events that we get to be a part of is that, what you just did, the networking. We love the opportunities to connect with people and find someone maybe you didn't know before or you have a connection in the past, who knows. There's great opportunities as you just turn around and talk to the people around you, so thank you for doing that. One small example as I turn the time over to Craig and Rebecca here is as we promo these every single month, and our very own Elisa Hassler, her parents tune in every single month to RevU, all the way from Idaho, and as they watch the promo for this month's Builder Series with Craig, they realized that, I don't know how many years ago, but he was a mission president for the LDS Church at a mission that they served in Brazil. So kind of fun little fact there, little connections all around the world that makes it smaller and makes us feel like family. So we will go ahead and turn the time over. Oh my goodness. Which one? This guy right here? Welcome. Thanks so much. That's so fun. So hopefully you'll find those connections here and friendships and just great opportunities. And I'll turn the time over to Craig and Rebecca.
1, 2, 3, I'm on.
All right. You beat me to it.
You're plenty loud, so.
Okay. All right. I have been accused of being loud before. It's true.
That's too loud.
So, okay, I'll go back to normal speaking voice now. Anyway, since he actually sold the company 3 times, and we'll get into how that all happened. But since then, he was a mission president, and he's been an investor and a mentor to startup companies all around here locally, including being an adjunct professor at BYU. So, Craig, let's have a seat.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Thank you for joining us.
And before we even start,
Okay.
I want to add on to the end of that last session. So I love what they said about minimum viable product. We always talk about minimum viable. Nobody really cares about anything that you're doing until you can tell them that somebody's willing to give you some money for it. So kudos to those guys for the new term. I'm going to use that in my class, by the way. Minimum viable product.
5 cents every time. He really cares about monetization a lot.
He wants it to be viable, right?
Right, definitely. Yeah, thank you for that addition. So let's just dive right in. Tell us about Lifelink Corporation. How did that all get going?
So I'm a necessity entrepreneur. What I mean by that is that I took a job, I'm a CS graduate from BYU, and I took a job, of all things, selling life insurance. That's my first job. And the reason for that was I thought that would get me into Harvard Business School.
Okay.
I grew up outside of Boston. I'm a big Red Sox fan. I only wanted to go to business school if I go to Harvard. Mm-hmm. So I wasn't very... I was very naive. I didn't have a real view of the world, but that was my big plan. Go get some small business experience, which is what they told me I would get selling life insurance, and then I would get accepted to Harvard Business School. Well, that's not what happened, but, and this is the first thing I want you to take away from this today, the idea that you're looking for your business is often not the one you're thinking of. It will come out of nowhere. In my case, I took a job selling life insurance, which is interesting because I have 2 brothers. So there's 3 boys in the family, and my dad's a very good guy, but he would always say, be careful of 3 professions, doctors, lawyers, and insurance guys. So my next brother is a doctor. The littlest one is a lawyer, and I became the insurance guy. Anyway, so I took this job selling insurance, and I was terrible, literally the worst life insurance salesman ever. But this is 1977. We rode our dinosaurs over, and the computers. There wasn't any PCs yet, but there was no computer support for life insurance sales. And I watched these guys who were selling lots of insurance writing numbers down on the yellow pad and showing them to clients. And I'm going, you know what, for a little bit of money on a computer, we could actually do better than that. And somehow, I got my agency manager to spend $40,000 to buy a cabinet that stood about this high, and we had a 50 megabyte disk that was in another cabinet about that high, and that's how we launched Lifelink.
Wow. So going on from that, what problem did you solve? You know, what exactly did the company do?
So the original problem that we solved was the estate tax calculation. So the agency that I was in sold life insurance to wealthy estate holders, mostly farmers out there in Southern California. We sold life insurance to cover the estate tax. And so in order to cover the estate tax, you have to plug in all of their assets and do a rough calculation of what they would owe in estate taxes. Mm-hmm. And then it was a simple sale. You're going to owe $5 million in estate taxes, so you need a $5 million insurance policy. So they were doing that with a calculator, you know, to put them all in, and I wrote a little program to do that, and that was the first program. That was very popular. Immediately after that, I got into what my business was, which is then to take those numbers and illustrate the insurance product. So I started doing life insurance illustrations, and I wouldn't even want it described to you what life was like back then, except to say that many of our users had a device called CompuShare. It was a briefcase, and you open up the briefcase, and it had the two acoustic cups in it, and you take a phone and dial a number that we would give you. You plug the phone into that thing, and
This is very high tech.
Anyway, it's embarrassing, but that's how we launched our business.
Oh no, not embarrassing.
No, it's totally embarrassing. I hate telling.
I mean, for back in the dark ages.
I hate telling that story because it's so dinosaur, but you know, if you think where we've come now, you guys don't even think about anything. You just throw it up on AWS. It scales from 0 to infinity all by itself. You have no excuses.
But, you know, I think a lot of the same principles hold true. You solve a real problem.
Yeah.
You made the insurance agents' lives much easier. You kept better track of their data and
you know,
all that kind of stuff.
Now that you say that, right? It reminded me of something. What really got me into business, what really got me excited about my business was finding a new life insurance agent and showing him or her what I could do with my computers, what he or she could do with the computer support I could provide. It wasn't really the money, and I think there's a principle there. Lots of people think that we entrepreneurs go into this for the money, and we do. I mean, money's important, but my real paydays, the ones what really kept me going was somebody saying, that changes my life, that changes my business, now I can do something differently. And then that's the ultimate validation, right?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah,
I love
money is the ultimate validation, but that will follow if you solve a real problem.
Yeah. Well, yeah, thank you for sharing that. So one of the things we like to talk about at RevRoad University is relationships and how the people around you can help you succeed or not succeed. I understand you had the chance to work with some really amazing women, actually. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I liked, so this is all done totally not on purpose. This is the way it happened. But I ended up in 2003, I was called as a mission president so I left my company and went to Brazil. And everybody told me I should sell my company before I go. And I wanted to, by the way. But 2003 follows 2001, and none of you would remember this, but there was the dot-com crash happened, and valuations were way down. So I was not getting offers for my company anywhere near what I thought it was worth, or what I felt it was worth to me. So I didn't sell. So I did. In fact, there was an article that ran in the Deseret News the week that I got on the plane to Brazil. And it was a friend of mine from BYU who wrote a weekly business article for the Deseret News criticizing my decision, saying it was a really poorly veiled coverage of me, saying that a bird in the hand is worth a lot more than two in the bush, and I should have sold. And he was saying how what a bad decision it was to leave the company in inexperienced hands. Well, the president that I left the company in the hands of had been hired by us, not by me. I didn't even know who she was when we hired her, as in our lowest entry level. She was a tech support, receiving tech support calls.
Wow.
And she worked her way up to run the marketing, to become the vice president. And to me, she was the obvious one to run the company when I left. So I made her the president. I made her a 3-year deal. You stay, you get this bonus, then you get a really big one at the end of 3 years when I get back, and we'll all be happy. And so she was my vice president. I had another woman vice president. I had an office manager. My whole management team was women. And not because I said I need to have women, it's because I said I need to have the best people, and they were the best people.
So how did you determine that they were the best people? Like, how did somebody go from being basically customer service to being the president of the company? And how did you make those decisions?
It's obvious. I don't know what to. Everything that they did was better than other people in the company. We started the company in Southern California, and in '92 I moved up to Park City, which is kind of a radical thing for a small software company. Mm-hmm. But we established ourselves in Park City. I've been there now for 26 years. I sold the company 14 years ago, but we had a culture that attracted people. It wasn't just I thought it was a cool company, and apparently a lot of other people did too. Nobody ever left. We had to run a few people out, but we didn't. If you were good, you didn't leave, because we had a great culture. And she carried that on as well, or better than any of the rest that she got. She had the vision better than anybody else.
Oh, that's great. That's inspiring. Thank you for sharing that with us. So let's dive into the interesting question I mentioned at the beginning. You sold the company 3 times?
Yeah.
Now, how did that work out?
So I'll start by saying this. The reason that I mentor today is because I never really had a mentor. And I don't know how I got here or to the end of that road. I really don't. It was, I'm sure there was the hand of God in there along the way. So I don't actually know, or I don't really have a good idea that I'm creating an asset with value. I think I've created a job for myself, and I'm very happy about that as I get my company going. Mm-hmm. But I don't really think about the long term. I just never had anybody sit down and say, if you do this and this, then you get it's 10 times revenue or 5 times revenue. I never went through all of that. So I go to a trade show, and a friend of mine who has not a competitor but a kind of a cooperative company with mine, he says, "Yeah, so I just sold a minority piece of my company to GE." And I said, "You did what?" He said, "Yeah, it was the coolest thing. These guys called me up and they said, GE's buying life insurance software companies. They're putting together a little stable of companies that they'll eventually roll together. And I just sold a piece of my company to them." And I said, "I want to do that." So he said, "Great, I'll introduce you to my board guy." So anyway, my first transaction was in '98. I sold a third of my company to GE, the largest company in the world at the time, and in my view, the smartest people in the world. It was kind of the ultimate validation. They came in and told me I had one of the best run small companies they'd ever seen. They wanted to buy it. They bought it. And I was the happiest guy on earth.
All right.
Then a year and a half later, they come to me and say, "So in our process here, here's what we're going to do. We're going to roll you up with a company called Channel Point. They're in Colorado Springs. And that'll be the kind of the umbrella company. And then we're going to take that public in 2 years, maybe a year or two after that. And we're all going to be filthy rich." I said, "Well, that sounds exactly right to me." So I agree to all of that, and I sell the company. Fortunately, and I'm not sure why they had me take stock and notes, but I took some notes. And sign everything. I'm the happiest guy on earth the second time because now I see a way to cash out. I go over to Colorado Springs for my first visit, and they have an old shopping mall. They've got like an old Kmart, and they've got 500 programmers out there spread around this room, and I'm thinking that is the most impressive thing I've ever seen. Mm-hmm. So I go to my meeting. I say, so this is a platform for processing insurance, end-to-end, from the application all the way to policy service. And they have the platform. We're supposed to be plugging all this stuff in. So I said, okay, so give me some stuff here, and we'll get to work. Well, we really don't have anything we can give you today. And I was like, oh, that's not what I wanted to hear.
Right. Well, and with the CS background, you would know, right?
Yeah.
You know what you're looking for.
You're not exactly going to be able to BS me with a bunch of PowerPoint slides, which is what they were doing to everybody else.
Wow.
So I kind of nosed around for about 3 weeks, and I realized that this whole thing, Channel Point, was a fraud. And there was nothing there. And not only that, I couldn't tell anybody because all these GE careers were rolled up in the decisions they had made, and nobody wanted to hear from me, little old kid from Park City, that they had a big fraud on their hands. Eventually, Channel Point went down, took $80 million of GE money and $500 million total, and disappeared in about 2003. And when that happened, I was able to take myself back out of Channel Point, and I got the GE piece back to them. I told them, I said, look, I thought you guys were the smartest guys in the world. Apparently, I never did say this, but apparently I'm the smartest guy in the world. I never did say this to them, but apparently you're not the smartest guys in the world, so I don't want anything to do with you anymore. So not only do you have to give me back my Channel Point stock, but I want the GE piece back. So I got 100% of my stock back near the end of 2001. So then I go, I'm looking for a buyer, but then I get a phone call, and I go down and meet with President or Elder Nelson at the time, and so that anyway, everything changes, and I'm going off to Brazil. So I left it. I had a broker, and after we'd been in Brazil 6 months, and I think there's an important lesson there for if you're LDS, you'll get this. If you're not, roll with me. I have a feeling, I have a deep-seated feeling that Heavenly Father wanted me to understand that I wasn't selling the company. So he made me wait 6 months. I got to Brazil. Obviously, I had nothing to do with the sale. I had tried really hard to sell it before. 6 months into Brazil, I get this great offer, all cash, and I took it. So I sold the company. My CEO that I left, she finished her 3-year deal. She happened to end up not liking the buyer, unfortunately. She quit 3 years and 1 day after she got her big bonus. She's a smart girl. And anyway, that's my three sales story.
Oh, wow. So what advice would you give to entrepreneurs or business people here in the audience about being acquired?
There is no advice. Every single acquisition is different. You just have to know your buyers. I think you would agree with me, though. I didn't make a big mistake. If you're going to sell to the biggest company in the world, you could do all the due diligence you wanted, but nobody would have I would never have known that going in.
Yeah, well, and I like what you said about being a mentor, and I think that translates to good advice. Find a mentor. Find people who've done this before who can help you along the way. And, on that topic, we really appreciate here at RevRoad all of the good work you've done with My Roadmap and Momni, our portfolio companies. And one of the things that they've focused on is getting traction early on.
Yep.
So from your experience, what advice can you give people here about finding that traction?
Well, I want to back up just a little bit.
Yeah, please.
So whenever I meet with a company, I ask 3 questions. The first question is, what do you do? And you would be shocked how few companies can answer that question. And especially how few companies can answer that question in one sentence. When I ask the question, or when people ask the question, what do you do? You should have the one-line answer. And it's the right answer if when you finish it, the person you're talking to goes, I like that. I get that. Because if you say it and then you have to add 4 more sentences on trying to explain what the first sentence was, then you don't know what you do. And I find that with way too many companies. You don't actually know what you do. So the question that I'm trying to get the answer to is not your marketing answer, what do you do, but what is your core competency? What do you have to get right to get money from your customers? That, to me, is what you do. Or for the CEO, what do you worry about each day when you get up? That's what you do. And if you don't understand what you do, then you might not be focused on the right stuff. In the session earlier, they were talking about North Star metrics. I like that. So that's the key metrics from the lean canvas. If you have the right key metric, then you know what you do, because the key metric is measuring what you do. So I often don't get past the first question, which is, what do you do? I'll spend 45 minutes and I say, so here's your assignment. Go back and figure out what you do, and then go back and we'll talk again. The second question is, okay, so that's what you do. So what is your competitive advantage? What's your unfair advantage? What do you have that nobody else has? It's often not, and in fact, I would always say suspect is IP. People will claim that they have IP. IP is only as good as your ability to defend it. So I'm not sure that a patent or any other kind of IP is actually the right answer. Although if you have a solid patent, that's definitely your competitive advantage. But you need to understand, you need to know, you need to be able to claim and defend what do I do better than anybody else in this field? And that's why customers will do business with you. And then my third question is easy if you get the first two, and that is, do you have a recurring revenue model? Have you figured out how to make your product a subscription so that when the year starts, you're not starting at 0, but you're starting at some subscription base? In Lifelink, we were about 95% recurring revenue. Big insurance companies sending us checks every month. It was the coolest business in the world.
Oh, that's a great answer. It's very helpful. So we didn't talk about this in the pre-interview, but can you think of any companies who do that particularly well, or companies that you've worked with who have that one good answer to what they do, have that good, I think the second thing you said, recurring revenue, and
yeah, I know one that does it really well. So I'm the original investor in Podium. Podium.
Oh, okay, you guys heard of that, Podium?
You might have heard of Podium. Podium knows exactly what they do. It's all recurring revenue. In fact, it's probably the reason I got excited about them, because when they started, they were selling $300 a month subscriptions to tire shops, which is Eric's dad, if you've heard their story. Eric's dad owned a tire shop, and he was solving a problem for his dad with customer reviews. But they understood early on, they had the answers to all 3 of those questions.
Well, thank you very much. So interesting that you were one of the first investors in Podium. You mentioned you kind of had a lot of people telling you it wasn't a good idea. Is that correct?
No, well, no. What happened was.
Oh, okay.
What happened? So the Podium story is this. I'm a mentor. I teach, and I'm closely associated with the Center for Entrepreneurship at BYU. So if somebody calls the center and they have a product, a physical product, the center will give them to Corbin Church, who probably many of you know. He's a really good entrepreneur, and he's a physical product guy. Got lots of ties to China and all that cool stuff. And I don't know that I'm the greatest SaaS guy, but I've sort of turned into the software SaaS mentor. So, these guys called the center gave them my name, I talked to them, and I thought it was going to be a kind of a cool hobby, that they'd be able to generate a little bit of revenue with this thing. And but I love the 2 guys, and I love the fact that they were so committed and they understood what they were doing. So when it got time to talk about raising their first round, I introduced them to Kickstart, and then they found Peak kind of on their own. So the first round was Peak, who was the lead, and they put the most money in, and then Kickstart Fund, and then me. So I was the only individual investor. And then it's about 18 months later, it might even be less than that. I won't tell you what the original round was because you'd be too jealous if I told you what the valuation was. But we did the second round, it was a 6x increase already. This is about 18 months later. When that round happened, like all of my angel buddies would come to me and say, why didn't you get me into Podium? And I would just say, if I'd have told you about Podium 18 months ago, you'd have laughed at me. You told me I was an idiot for investing. So I didn't tell you because I didn't want you to laugh at me. And now that it's already 6x, yeah, you want in, but I bet you still won't write the check. And they didn't. A lot of the good angels, Jeremy Andrus and Mike Leventhal and some others, got in on the second round there. And just a little story. We'll quit talking about Podium. But
No, please.
I was at, you guys, I think some of you may know Mike Leventhal. He's a really well-known angel here. He lives in Park City. And we were at the Cotopaxi, it was Davis Smith's 40th birthday party at Cotopaxi. And I ran into Mike Leventhal, and he and my wife and I were talking about Podium. And he was going on and on about how excited he was about Podium. He said, yeah, I've told my daughter about it. I was saying, this is one of the best investments I ever made, blah, blah, blah. And then he walked away, and I said to my wife, do you see how excited he is about Podium? Do you see that? Most of our investment is 6 times more valuable than what he's talking about.
Wow, that's a great moment.
That was a good moment.
Well, thank you so much for answering all of my questions. And I would love to turn it over to audience questions. So please remember, wait for the mic. But who would like to know something from Craig? Derek, here in the front. A swarm of microphones. Thanks, guys.
Okay, so what do you know now that you wish that you knew when you first started?
The biggest thing for me is to kind of start with the end in mind. So if you're building a SaaS company, you should know that once you get rolling, SaaS companies are valued about 10 times revenue. So the place where I try to help most startups is when they take their first round. And everybody is going to tell you to take as much money as possible, except for Craig. And I'm going to tell you to take as little as possible and to wait as long as you can to take it. Because you only get to sell your equity once, and you should sell for as much as you can. And the second thing I would say is don't ever, ever, ever get into an equal partnership with anybody. Every company needs to have a clear leader, the CEO, and that person should have the majority of the stock or should have the largest share of the stock. You don't have to own a majority necessarily, but if there's 3 partners, you can't be a third, and a third. Somebody's got to be, I don't care if it's 49 and the other 2 divide the other. Somebody has to be the clear leader. I won't talk to groups, to partnerships. I won't talk to student groups who have that equal. I said, first of all, it's not going to work. I will promise you a year from now, this is going to fall apart. And I don't want to talk to a group that doesn't have a clear leader. So.
Oh, yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't heard that before, but that's great advice.
Every student company starts with 2 or 3 students, or whatever the number is, sitting around the table going, here's our company, and we're all equal owners, right? Worst idea in the world. Absolutely the worst idea in the world.
Wow,
and if some of you are in that situation in this group here today, I'll be happy to talk to you because I've helped a whole bunch of companies through it.
Oh, yeah, I think probably a lot of people will be interested in talking
And
to
the
you.
earlier, the better. It gets harder and more complicated each day that goes by.
Oh, that's so interesting. Thank you. So do we have other questions?
Yeah, right here. So I have a question on that number 2. They had to answer those 3 questions, and what was defensible. Can you give us an example, maybe like with Lifelink
Yeah.
or like with Podium? I mean, it's software. if you take the idea, it just seems like you get a bunch of other coders in the room and you can more or less replicate the idea.
Here's what Podiums is, and I'll tell you what Lifelinks was. Here's what Podiums is, and this is not well understood, and I'm probably giving away a secret here that they may not even want me to say. But the real thing that Podium does is the people at Podium have figured out how to get customers to respond to surveys. Most of you today will not respond to a survey. You get a survey and you go, yeah, gone. So they're sending you a text right at the time that you're either leaving or within a couple hours of the time that you've been at the business. And it's a survey, but it's worded so that it's kind of sucks you in. I would say they really understand the psychology of surveys, and they help their people design surveys that get results. And that's why they have some incredible numbers like 15 or 20% response rate versus 1 or 2%. So that's an example of if I was interviewing Podium and said, what do you do? They would say, we manage customer reviews. And I go, okay, so do 100 other companies. And that's the point you're making. So then I said, what do you do that's different? What do you do that makes you different? And that's when we got to that piece. I said, well, if you actually are doing that, that is it. That will make you a company, and that's what's made them. Now, Lifelink was easier because when we started, we didn't have any competition. So we're putting numbers on a piece of paper rather than you having to draw them on a yellow pad. It was just that simple. And as we developed, as we got to be a mature company, I will tell you what really made us a company was that we could take, it's too complicated to explain, but anyway, we could put multiple companies on one piece of paper. Nobody else ever, to this day, actually, nobody's still doing that. Is that a sentence? Nobody's still, anyway, you get the point.
I think we understand. Did you have a follow-up, or you?
Well, so let's say you're a competitor of Podium, right? And
Which, by the way, 8 are launched every week right here in Utah County.
And so as a competitor, you do some competitive research and you figure out what they're doing to get that 20%. What's preventing them from kind of saying, well, we can replicate that as well?
Go for it. Podium's not the right one. You shouldn't be talking to me about Podium.
Or I guess I'm looking for another example, right?
I would just tell you can't compete with Podium. I'm sure somebody can. If I was going to compete with them, I would find a niche that they haven't figured out how to solve. So often the mistake that new companies make is that they define the market as this, right? So that every small business in the country. Podium started off with tire shops, then they went to dental. What really launched them was they got into dental, and then they went to everybody in the world. Here's one of the things I always ask, try to teach this concept. That is, not only do you need to be able to describe your customer in detail, if you're a new company, you need to tell me the name of your first customer. You need to know who your first customer is. You need to be developing your product for that first customer. Because if you're developing it for a nebulous, this is my idea of my customer, you still don't have a validated product. If you have a named first customer, somebody you're talking to, and you take your code over to them once a week and say, here's what we're doing, and they're giving you feedback, you're going to be a real company.
Oh, I love that. Thank you so much. So I have a question here. Dave, is it?
Yep. So you mentioned a little bit earlier about the culture that you were able to create at Lifelink, and I guess what I've seen in my experience is there's so many different companies with great people in them, but only few that are able to develop the culture where everybody is fully invested. So my question is, what is it that you've seen in your experiences with Lifelink and other companies that have created the culture where the great culture that you speak about?
Well, I'll be very honest. It's the reason I wouldn't want to start another company, because it's the hardest thing in the world to do, is to create a culture. And I didn't set out to create a culture. I could only look back on it and say, oh, well, we have a pretty good culture here because people don't leave, people like to come to work, and we feel good about the work that we do. We feel like we're solving problems. Although, I have to say this. So my brother's an emergency room doctor, and he's been for 40 years. And, you know, when he gets to the pearly gates, or however that's going to work, he's going to say, I help people all through all kinds of medical emergencies. When I get there, I'm going to say, I help rich people manipulate the tax law through using life insurance. I don't have to think of a better answer, but that's really that's really what we were doing. But what was the question? How did I get into that?
So how do you build the culture?
Oh, back to the culture, yeah. So for some reason, we were bought into this manipulating the tax law culture. No, it wasn't that. Our culture was satisfied clients. And we had a partnership with each of the insurance companies that we worked with, a really close culture, a really close relationship. We had annual meetings, you know, an annual conference where they came to Park City, and we saw them all at the trade shows all the time. We were really good friends with the people that were our customers, which were not the salespeople, but the sales support people inside these big, giant life insurance companies. So in our company, just, you know, if you take away the customers, our culture was, I said to everybody, all my employees, software companies are famous for all-nighters, you know, people working 12 hours a day. That does not happen in Lifelink. I want your best 8 hours. And then I want you to get out of here and go ski, go to your kids' soccer games, go do whatever you do. Just give me your best 8 hours, and you've done what I hired you to do. And I think people really like that. The second thing I would say, if you want a good culture, and it's the ultimate compliment that I got throughout my career, and that was all my employees said, we love your honesty. We always know where we stood with you, and also that honesty pervaded throughout the company. When we did our orientation, we said to each new employee, we require absolute honesty in 3 areas. Number 1, with yourself. Tell us if it's working out here, and if it's not, then tell us, and we'll fix it. We'll either run you out of here, or we'll get you, we'll figure out how to use you best. So be absolutely honest with yourself. Then, always be absolutely honest. I'm missing somebody. With our customers. Oh, sorry. So with yourself, with your team, with the people that you work with. Be honest with all of us, and then with our customers. So I said, yeah, I know that you've been other places where you may have been asked to lie or to shade the truth in the companies you work with. That doesn't happen here. If you ever feel like that you're being asked to do that, you need to come tell me, because we don't do that. And then I will jump to my most important lesson, I think, if you're going to be successful as a business person, and that is to manage expectations. Mm-hmm. If you can learn one skill, I would say that's the most important, manage expectations. And here's a story I'll tell you on that. When I would go to sell, this is now after we're established, when I would go to sell a new insurance company, I would always, in some point in the sales process, tell them, but remember, we are just the dumb software guys. And I love to tell my class that, and I go, what? I say, no, I'm managing expectations here. All of my competitors are going to tell this potential customer that they're the smartest guys on the planet, they always deliver on time, they're the cheapest solution available, and all the rest of it. And what have they just done? They have set an expectation they can never meet, ever. No way in the world. But I can meet the dumb software guys. I can guarantee you I can over jump that bar. So you can approach it however you want to do it, but you have to learn how to manage expectations, because you need to manage your employees and your customers and keep everybody happy. So, I had a great story I was just going to tell you, and I'm I'm thinking too fast. It'll come back
Well,
to me.
thank you so much. I think we have one more audience question, and then we'll get to lunch.
So I just wanted to ask what you think about people that want to bootstrap for funding just to keep control, or what you would say to that, or if there's any circumstances where you could see that being a successful way to start up.
About 50%?
No, I'm sorry, like bootstrap. So rather than get funding from elsewhere, just kind of starting it up on your own with your own funding.
Oh, okay, bootstrap versus taking funding. I'm going to quote Greg Warnock here. Greg Warnock is Mercado, great investor here in Utah. I heard him say this to a group of students, asked that very same question. And he said this, so I'm going to give you two answers. If you were my brother, I would say, never take funding. And by the way, I bootstrapped Lifelink all the way, only because I didn't know that there was alternatives. And I'm probably the only software entrepreneur you'll ever meet who owned 100% of the stock of his company when I sold it.
Wow.
I owned 100% of Lifelink stock when I sold it.
Congrats.
The reason for that is because I took it back and it was complicated. There's something you should research, phantom stock. Phantom stock is just a construct that allows you to pay employees bonuses as if they own stock, but they don't actually own the stock. And it's a great, nobody uses it that I know of today. I use it through my whole career. I said, when people come in and ask me for stock, I would say, you don't want stock in this company. It's never going to be worth anything. Because I thought that my whole life, till it was worth something. You don't want stock in this company. What you want is more money. So here's how we'll get you some more money. And they always took the money. So back to bootstrap versus funding. If you're my brother, I would tell you bootstrap. If you're anybody else, because I want to invest in your company, then I'm going to tell you that you need money to grow fast, and you do. And the answer is what I said earlier, by the way. You do need funding.
Right.
You take as little as you can, as late as you can, and remember that you can only sell your equity once.
That's some really good advice. I think I would want to be your brother in that situation, though. My interest at heart. So the last question we like to ask all of our entrepreneurs, what's something fun and exciting that your success has allowed you to do?
Yeah, it's not much of a mountain over there in that picture, but when I was 41, so let's see, when was that? Anyway,
We won't make you do the math.
Yeah. I decided that instead of getting a red Corvette or a girlfriend, that I would have my midlife crisis by going off and climbing big mountains. So this is the way I do everything in my life. I watched a show and I saw this group summit Aconcagua, which is the highest point in South America. And I said to my wife, you know what, I think I'm going to go do that. And I researched it. I bought myself a place on a guided climb of Aconcagua in February of '96, I think it was. And then I got a gear list and I went down to REI, which I don't think anybody goes to REI anymore, but that was the outdoor store back then. And I bought all this cool stuff, 40 below sleeping bag and all this great stuff. And I think most of it probably still had the price tags on it when I landed in Santiago, Chile, and met my group. And then we went over to Mendoza, and 2 weeks later, I was on the top of Aconcagua.
Wow.
23,000 feet, just the coolest thing in the world. And so then from there, I decided I was going to go climb the 7 summits. So I went off on my little quest, and I ran aground on Denali in Alaska. I went there 3 times and got weathered out all 3 times. I was in perfect health and perfect position, and Denali can just be a mean mountain. And so I came home disappointed, but not I spent 50 nights, 50, on Denali, most of them at 40 below. And I still think about, I love that mountain and all the experiences I had up there. So being an entrepreneur allowed me to do that. And then it also allowed me to, when I got the phone call from the church, allowed me to walk away from my business and go serve. And I'll never forget what President Nelson said, as Elder Nelson at the time. He said, thank you for putting yourself in a position to be able to serve at a young age. I was 48 when I went out. And I really, really felt good about that. So I don't know that you should set that as a goal. We don't do that in the church, but you should set as your goal to get in and get out. Work is a means to an end, and the end should be to be able to turn your life view outside of yourself and begin serving others. So you decide how you're going to do that. But for me, it wasn't a choice, actually. Well, it was a choice, but you could say no, but we don't do that. So anyway, I said yes, and off we went.
Wow. Well, thank you. You've had such an incredible life so far, and more to come.
It's good stuff, yeah.
All right. Well, I think that's a wrap for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Craig. I got something for you. We like to give our guests a water bottle and a RevRoad
Thank you.
satchel, so you can put all your
Great being with you.
your mountain climbing gloves and stuff in that. So really inspiring. Couple fun things. Hold on a second. Couple fun things that I took away from that, Craig, was
I'm still here.
the partnership. We believe in that wholeheartedly, and that's how we counsel our entrepreneurs as well.
No equal
No
partnerships?
equal partnership.
Good.
Even if you're best friends.
Is there anybody here we have to fix?
We can help with that. Also, I loved your dad's advice, but you brothers followed your dreams. That was awesome. And my final favorite part was, we have no excuses. So there you go, guys. Listen to Craig Earnshaw. Thank you so much, Craig. Appreciate it.